Working Fans Podcast. Cool.
Yep.
All right, here we go. Coming down 3, 2.
Welcome back for another week of the Working Fans Podcast. This is AJ. I'm the former wrestler. We've got Dave, the ultimate fan, here with us as we do every week. Our producer Joe likes to make us sound good and makes us look way more professional than we actually are. As always, you can find us on Twitter, that's @FansWorking, Facebook, Working Fans Pod. We've got email where you can reach out to us and please contact us to let us know what you think of the podcast and for any ideas that you might have. That's workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. We're on Instagram where you can keep up with us at workingfanswrestling_pod. And then you can now listen to us on all major platforms, including Anchor.fm. We're on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Apple Podcasts, and you can actually check us out on YouTube. Now, it's important when you go onto the Apple Podcasts and YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a rating, let us know what you think so you can help us out and we can continue to do what we love and bring you guys in as fans.
This is Rudy Gonzalez of the Texas Wrestling Academy here in San Antonio, Texas, and you're listening to the Working Stand Podcast.
It's the Working Fans Podcast with Dave, and today we have a longtime wrestler, started in 1984, and a longtime trainer, Mr. Rudy Gonzalez. Rudy, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
Great, man. Great to have you on. I was doing a little research, and you can help me out with this. I saw that you were trained by, this is the people it listed, Manny Fernandez, Tully Blanchard, Chavo Guerrero, and Ken Timms?
Yeah, and the names go on and on and on.
Yeah.
Back then, we didn't have an actual wrestling school where you trained like now you train to be a wrestler. So actually, I started training in 1982. Southwest Wrestling did have a wrestling school, but it was mainly like Larry Lang was the trainer of that, and he did a lot of just amateur wrestling, and a lot of cardio stuff and stuff like that. And I guess that was the start of your, if you continued, you would later go on and train to be a professional wrestler. But that ended up dissolving, and they asked me if I could help train some guys here and there, and I did. But I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and it was mainly just, let's get in the ring and practice doing this or whatever. And then when I, somewhere in there, they asked me to I was traveling with the group also and selling T-shirts and stuff like that. And then somewhere during that time, they asked me to referee some matches, and I did. And then, on occasion, maybe like Manny Fernandez would say, hey, what are we doing tomorrow morning? And so I was open to anything, so I was like, nothing. And so, well, meet me at the ring at 10 o'clock in the morning, or Chavo would tell me that, or Ken Timms was like, hey, you want to do some cardio? Sure, all right, meet me at the junction where we did our TV shows. Meet me at the junction at 11 o'clock, or Dick Slater would say, when a guy does this, you should do that. Or, different guys gave me different little tips here and there. So I learned a little bit from everybody. Tully Blanchard was like, one day he came in and he's like, hey, let me teach you how to do a body slam. And I said, okay. So he told me where to put my hands, all the other stuff, whatever. And he scoots me up and he slams me. And he's like, how does that feel? I guess I'm never took a body slam before. So
right.
And so all in all, he ended up giving me like 10 body slams one day, and I never gave him any though. And so
smart guy.
That's how I learned how to do a body slam by taking them 10 times in a row by Tully Blanchard. And the rest of the day, the next 2 days, my back felt like it was blown up. It was just like up to that point, I'd never felt that way before. And then as time went on, then you get used to it and stuff like that. But yeah, I lift those guys because they were the ones that really gave me the most time. But I mean, there were a lot of guys, in the dressing room, it was like a classroom in itself, They just always giving you tips and advice here and there,
Now, would you say you had a pretty good entry into the business? I mean, I've heard some stories where guys, I'm sure they definitely, they tested you, but you've heard some brutal stories too of guys getting legs broken and stuff. It sounds like you had a lot of people at least willing to help you out.
You know what? In all honesty, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat nothing. But I said it before, though, but I never had a guy that ever tried to abuse me or try and, straighten me out, I guess. I don't know. I hear guys that say, oh, yeah, you hear the Hulk Hogan story.
Right.
The guy that broke him in snapped his ankle, and you hear Al Snow talk about, Ole and those guys would, or whoever would nail guys and stretch them and stuff in the ring. And I've seen guys do that, but it was never done to me. I was always treated right, and I think a lot of it had to do with I gave all the older guys the respect that I felt like they deserved. And that's just the way I was raised. I was always yes sir, no sir, no ma'am, yes ma'am.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I do this? Can I help you with that? That type of stuff.
That'll open some doors for you.
Yeah, I mean, and no one ever told me, but I did it. No one ever told me you got to carry in the veteran's luggage, and I did. If I was grabbing my stuff, hey, you want me to grab your bag as well? And yeah, sure, okay. And I did. I was never told this, but I did it. I was always the guy that drove guys around. I was never told you got to pay your dues by driving everybody, but I didn't mind. And to this day, I enjoy driving. When I go on road trips with my guys, you can ask them down to the most recent trip we ever made, who does the driving, and they'll say me because I enjoy driving. So I was never abused by anybody. Closest I can say I was tested was when the first day I worked. I had a match in Laredo, Mexico. It was against a guy named Solar, and luckily, due to my my amateur wrestling training, which wasn't a whole lot, but it was something. Solar tried to stretch me, and I could tell, and I knew, and I didn't let him. And I mean, I'm not saying I was fighting back with him stuff. I just wouldn't let him stretch me. And so when we went to the back, he told me, I did well and stuff. And then the next week I went back there, another guy named Guerrero Negro tried to do the same thing. He wasn't as, years later, or later on I found out, he wasn't as skilled. Solar was actually an Olympic wrestler. Guerrero Negro was just a guy that knew how to shoot. And then he tried to do the same thing and same thing. I wouldn't let him do it. And then the third week was a guy named Mano Negro, I think it was, and he tried to, I shouldn't say shoot on me. They just tried, and I wouldn't let him. And then, I guess those were three guys that, that were testers, I guess, or I don't know. And so then after that, my matches were a lot easier, and guys, but I was never abused as, breaking into stuff,
No, that's good. That's good to hear. You debuted in 1984, right?
What was that again?
Did you debut? Was it 1984? Was your debut?
I actually, my first match was February 6th, 1984.
Wow. How many different territories did you work? I started watching you, I want to say the first time I remember you was like in the 90s. I saw you doing some enhancement stuff with WWE, but you had a long career before that.
I started with Southwest Wrestling.
Okay.
Blanchard, with Joe Blanchard and Tully and Manny, all those guys down there. And then Southwest shut down, and a guy named Fred Barron took over, and he started a group called Texas All-Star Wrestling, and I worked with them. And it was based out of here in Texas. I worked briefly for World Class, and then Fred was actually the local promoter for World Class Wrestling, and then he bought out Southwest Wrestling and created Texas All-Star Wrestling. And then when Fred ended up shutting down, and I did a couple of trips to Florida and, different other spots, but nothing like, where I lived there forever and ever. So when Fred shut down, by that time, the independents started like sprouting up. So there are a few guys here and there that did some shows around Texas. And then one day, Dusty Wolf asked me if I was free to to fly to, it might have been like Indianapolis or something like that. Or I was sure for what? And he said, well, Vince needs some guys, and so, would you mind? And I said, and he told me your flight's paid for, you get paid this much money, your hotel, if I don't remember correctly, I think the hotel was paid for also, and I was like, sure, so I flew up and did some enhancement stuff with WWF, and then I started going down to Mexico, like I said, and that was like 3-4 days out of the week, and, the time that I would come back to the States, it just so happened that it was time for another WWF loop. So, I was doing that back and forth, and then Joe Blanchard called me one day, and he said, what are you doing for money? And I said, well, I'm doing this and this and whatever. and he said, "Would you mind helping me with some stuff I have to do with World Championship Wrestling and for NWA?" And I said, "Sure, what do I got to do?" He goes, "Well, I'm the event coordinator, and I need help doing stuff. So would you mind helping?" So, the thing was that Joe was, he had a bad hip, and he was, it was hard for him to get around stuff. So I was going to be the guy to drive him around and help him do whatever he needed to do. But he was also in charge of one of the rings. And when I first started, that's what I did, was the ring. So I started doing that with him, and then one day somebody, I think like Ricky Morton or Kevin Sullivan, said, "Hey, this kid can work," because they knew me from Joe and stuff. And so I got to do a couple of shows for NWA, WCW. I refereed for them, and then at the same time doing the WWF trips, and then going back and forth to Mexico. And then before I knew it, I was, and doing the local, indie shows around Texas. And then before I knew it, Sean called and asked me to help him run the school. That was like in 1998.
Now, you seem like a guy, you're a hard worker, from what I can tell. For you, what was probably one of the more challenging things about the business? Was it the travel or the bumps, or what was, for you, one of the more difficult things?
Staying busy. I mean, the travel's always going to be there,
yep.
No matter what. I mean, if you're going to do this, you're going to have to travel. The bumps, they're there.
Right.
You can't say, "I am not going to bump for you." Just staying busy, man, because I came in at a time when, all these big guys were running all over the place, and Kerry Von Erichs, Lex Luger and stuff. And so there really wasn't a whole lot of room for smaller guys like me. I could work, but I'm very upfront about this. I could work, and I understood working. I just wasn't the bodybuilder guy. Mm-hmm. I wasn't the most charismatic guy. I'm not Eddie Gilbert. I'm not Tom Pritchard. I'm not Brad Armstrong. I'm not, So, my opportunities were kind of limited. But, and that's why I went to Mexico, because there in Mexico, believe it or not, I'm 5'8", but in Mexico, I'm a lot bigger than a lot of guys there. So I got a lot of work down there. But the most challenging part, I guess, was just staying busy at that time, and uncertainty. You just didn't know when you were going to work again, or when was your last working day, or the politics and stuff. That I've never had a problem with that. That was I just tried to stay away from it. I got along with a lot of guys, whether they were on this side of the fence or that side of the fence. But yeah, I would say the most challenging part was just staying busy and paying the bills.
Obviously, you work with, you said, the Texas Wrestling Academy with Sean there. Do you have a preference between, being an active competitor or teaching? Do you have one that you like more than the other, or both different?
I honestly, in all honesty, I didn't get into pro wrestling to be a wrestler. I didn't, and that's probably why all the other stuff, the charisma stuff and all that, that's probably, all that's probably tied up into that package there. I didn't get into pro wrestling to wrestle. I got into pro wrestling to learn the wrestling business. But in high school, after high school, my dreams or whatever were to be a football coach for my high school. Yeah. And so, I mean, so what drew me into Southwood Wrestling was the fact that Tully Blanchard was a quarterback here in San Antonio. He was a high-profile quarterback. Yeah. And then there was Manny Fernandez and Bruiser Brody, and Wahoo was here. Wahoo, I recognize his name from playing for the New York Jets, and I believe the Houston Oilers years ago. Ernie Ladd came through here. Ernie Ladd played for the Oilers, I believe. So many football guys in that territory back then. Exactly. And so that's kind of like what drew me in, the relationship with football and wrestling. There was a time in 98 when Sean called. The very week that Sean called me to run a school, I quit. And it wasn't the first time. I'd actually, and I'm not proud to say this, but at one point I actually walked out of a ring because I was just so frustrated, so angry with the way things were and that type of stuff. And so when Sean called and asked me, and so back to, when I quit, I actually just walked out and just grabbed my stuff. I gave my payday back to the promoter, back to the booker, who coincidentally was Jose Lothario. Oh, wow. Yeah, who also ran Sean's school. So when Sean called me and he asked me to help him with the school, the first thing I told him was, I really don't want to wrestle, Sean. He said, I'm not asking you to wrestle. I'm asking you to help train my guys. And I was like, well, in that case, then I'm in. And we hadn't even talked about money yet. But as far as, wrestling and training, man, I would much rather train guys and develop guys and, watch them become from nothing to something. The biggest, and I'm not saying it because it's him, but one of the, actually two of the biggest accomplishments that I've, I feel like I've done is creating two young men that were, eyes wide open and, wet behind the ears of Brian Danielson and Brian Kendrick. And then 20 years later, Brian Danielson is like the biggest name in the business, one of the biggest names in the business, and Brian Kendrick he's up there as well.
Yeah. I'll tell you a story. I watched wrestling since the 80s. I'm 43. Grew up on the Hogans, and, I transferred, started really liking the Bret Harts and the Perfects. And out of the last 10, 15 years, if there's one guy who has constantly kept me interested on the main, top level national scene, it's Brian Danielson. Like, his matches are just so compelling, and he's so good at he can be a great heel too, but he's a really good babyface, and he's one of those guys that really draw you in and you want to root for.
The first thing Brian Kendrick asked me, and Brian Danielson was right next to him, was, "Am I too small? Am I too small to do this?" And Brian Danielson looked at him and then looked at us. It was me and Sean standing next to her. Like, yeah, are we too small? Because they're the same size.
Right.
And Sean said, "No, not at all. What do you think?" And I'm like, "I don't think so. I'm the same size as they are." So if I laughed up to that point where I was in like 15 years, 16 years, so if I was still in it, I didn't see why they couldn't. So it was just a matter of putting in the work, and both of those boys have, and so seeing them develop the way they have, man, it's like, you could put the world title on me. You could, I don't know. It's nothing can compare to seeing those two boys, and anyone else that I've trained come from, point A to point C, or wherever they're at, and be as good as they are. So yeah, training part by far is what I enjoy doing the most.
Now, from a training perspective, was there anybody that you saw right away and you knew almost instantly, okay, this guy could be a star? And on the flip side, which is somebody said, I don't know, and that guy ended up being like a big surprise to you?
All the time. All the time. Sean had some, Brian and Brian, I'm not going to say we didn't think, we knew they would, we both knew they would do well. Just not, I didn't think they would do, Sean may say differently, because he knows more than I do, I guess, but I didn't think they would be at this, this far in the game. I didn't think they would be the names they are now. On the other side of that, man, we had guys, there was a kid that came in from the University of Washington, I believe. And I remember pulling him up, Brian something or other. I remember I pulled him up to look him up and stuff. And he was like an All-American. He was, but the only thing was he had knee surgery in his senior year. And so his position on the draft dropped quite a bit. And so he said, well, screw it, I'll try wrestling. And he was a big kid, athletic as hell. He just had a shitty attitude, And, you just don't do that with Sean. And there are a couple other guys, man. There was another kid who was on the practice squad for Washington Redskins. His name was Kevin. Huge kid, man. And again, athletic. If you would have put the Kane mask on him, you couldn't tell the difference. He was just, yeah, and we called him Kane. But I don't know, just something it's like the bigger guys, the guys that, that we were like, oh yeah, he's going to make it. Those are the guys that they just put in, and I know I'm putting like a blanket over all of them, but, might as well. But the bigger guys that came in and you're like, that guy has it, they were the guys that came in and put in the least amount of effort. And that sucked because we always preach to the guys, you get in what you put in, you take out what you put in. And so these guys, because I guess they were bigger and stuff like that, they just didn't feel like they had to do as much. Meanwhile, Brian Danielson and Brian Kendrick, they talked about it many times. Meanwhile, the smaller guys would try and find as much time to get in the ring, and there were times when training was over, and those guys would, hey, can we stick around and try some other stuff? Can you hang out with us a little bit longer and teach us some other, and shit over. Meanwhile, the bigger guys were like, see you tomorrow, coach, and then walk out.
Yeah.
And, so the smaller guys, it seemed like they had a chip on their shoulder of some type. They worked harder. The matches were always, like you said, compelling. They weren't always punch and kick and that type of stuff. It's just weird. So, I mean, there was, as far as, the guys that we thought we would make it and didn't, there were several. And a lot of them were the guys that were 6'2" and 250 and those type of guys.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember I started jiu-jitsu last year, and there were a lot of guys. A lot of it came down to attitude, like, we've been talking about. Like, there were guys, if you were humble and you'd go in and you're willing to learn, even if you weren't good at first, you could get better. But if you had a bad attitude, even if you were like athletically gifted and there was a more experienced guy who could take you down on the mat and submit you, and you didn't handle it well, you knew that guy wasn't going to last very long.
Yeah, I mean, and I tell my students this all the time. I mean, I'd much rather work with a guy and train a guy that's humble and, is willing to work hard. Doesn't have to be the greatest athlete in the world, doesn't have to be the most talented, doesn't have to be the most anything. Just come in and willing to learn and work. Then a guy who is the biggest athlete, who is the most talented, who, those guys seem to feel like they're entitled.
Yeah.
I guess. And it's just, especially in pro wrestling, it just doesn't work that way, man.
No, and that's a great life lesson, too, because, I've managed a store before, too, a grocery store, and it was always like the kids who were willing to try and had good attitude that you wanted to work with, even if somebody else was just naturally better and quicker at a job. But if he just had a poor attitude after a while, you're just like, just get this kid out of here. Get me someone who just wants to do his job,
It gets old. There was a guy that we were Brian and some of the boys had just gotten their tryout with WWE, and so of course the buzz around the gym was, who's going to be next? And so there was one kid. He was like 6'2", and he was stacked pretty well. He was a good-looking kid. So he said he was about 6 foot, I'd say. I don't know. And so somehow or another, the conversation came up where I'm going to get a tryout and stuff like that. And somebody said something like, well, what makes you think you're going to get a tryout? He goes, well, I'm just as big as Hunter. And me and Sean, we were talking, and we heard that, and Sean, turned around and looked at him, and whoever he was talking to was like, what? And he was like, yeah, I almost look just like him. And he looked at Sean, he goes, isn't that right, Sean? And Hunter's a beast. Right. I've seen him in person, and these two look nothing alike. And Sean just like, oh, I can't tell the difference. Yeah, you're right, I can't tell. The guy didn't catch the sarcasm, so he goes, see, I told you.
That's great. You were part of an angle, I think, in Ring of Honor for a bit where, I don't know if I want to call it an angle, but some of your students would wrestle and they would have you in the corner. How was that? How was that relationship? How did that come about?
So when Sean was running his promotion, Rob Feinstein came down and recorded some matches. Rob Feinstein and Doug Gentry. And got to meet them, good guys, helped them out with whatever they needed help on. And they were nice also. And so then they were down here, I guess, for a week or so, for a weekend. And so then a couple of years, a year or so later, now I'm stuck with Sean gave me the promotion, so I'm stuck with everything. And I'm not Shawn Michaels, so I'm trying to figure out a way to get my school out there, and the students and what have you. So I'm scrolling through the internet. There was a guy named, I don't remember what his name was, but he ran a promotion. He tried to run a promotion called Major League Wrestling or something, or Main Event Wrestling. Okay. And so he couldn't get anybody on that show. He said, on my next show, I'll bring you up here, bring your student for you. I said, all right. At the same time, I'm talking to Rob Feinstein. They're putting out a buzz about starting a promotion as well. So I messaged Rob, hey, you think maybe, I don't know if you remember me or not, this is Rudy Gonzalez down here in San Antonio. And Rob was like, yeah, we got to know who you are. Sure, no problem. So we talked a little bit back and forth. Meanwhile, the guy that was running the main event thing, he ran a show, and I believe everybody's check bounced, and it was a big mess. So I was like, screw that. So Rob said, I can't, it was Rob, Doug Gentry, and Gabe Sapolsky. I didn't know Gabe at the time, and so Rob said, I can't guarantee you a spot, but if you want to come up here, if anything opens up, I didn't want to have to put a couple of guys on. I said, all right. So I got my guys together, and I said, hey, in a few weeks, who wants to go to Philadelphia? This is what's going on, and I really did. I really had a good feeling with Ring of Honor because Rob was involved, and the way it sounded, and some of the guys they had on there. I never met AJ Styles or Amazing Red or Xavier or some of those guys, but I read about them on the internet. And I told the guys that I really have a good feeling about this. It's a good opportunity. Plus, they'd already had Bryan Danielson on the show and Brian Kendrick, and so my guys, I had a bunch of guys that said, all right, let's go. So we went up there, and sure enough, Gabe and Rob and Doug, they gave us the first match, I think it was, and it was a Texas Wrestling Academy challenge or something. And so that came out really good. The boys all worked hard, and, same. I try to have my guys mirror me as far as yes sir, no sir, that type of stuff. I guess they, I guess they rub, the powers that be the right way. And so when the show was over, Gabe came up and said, if you guys want to, if you guys want to come up here again, I'll have a spot for you guys. And so we just started going up there. And before you knew it, it was, I took some good guys up there. I took Paul London and Michael Shane and Hernandez and Masada, it was like an all-star group. And then there was Fast Eddie and Don Juan. And so everybody, and then on occasion, they would, I'd bring up another student and they would put them in, and maybe they worked out, maybe they didn't work out, but, that's how it got started, and to this day, I have a good relationship with Rob Feinstein and Gabe. Doug Gentry passed away a few years ago, rest in peace. But and it's just a matter of treating the opportunities like they mean something, and they saw that, and like I said, to this day, I have a great relationship with those guys.
Some keys to success here, if people are listening here. Good attitude, networking, and timing are all important in success.
Exactly.
In my research, I came across something else you were involved in. And I'm going to say this. I grew up on old school wrestling, and there were a lot of stereotypes back in the day. This shit would never probably fly today. But if you know where I'm going with this or not, I don't know, I'll tell it. But you were involved, I want to say it was a skit where JBL was patrolling the border of Mexico and not allowing anybody to come in. He was playing this heel character to get heat, and I was just curious how this came about. But like I was saying, there's no way this shit would ever go on right now, but it was interesting, I have to say. So how did that happen?
So JBL and Eddie Guerrero were doing their little program.
Yes.
And so Bruce Pritchard calls me, and he asked me if I could find, somebody to fill that spot of, he didn't tell me what it's for. And he just said, he said something like, he said something like, do you have any of your friends, or can you get, like, a Mexican family? Even the way he...
Right.
Even though he presented it was today, he'd be like, what are you talking about, man? Are you crazy? But he said something like, can you put together like a Mexican family, like your typical Mexican family, like a father and a mother and a grandmother and like a bunch of kids? And I'm like,
do you have a family lying around?
But he's not lying, though. And I was like, yeah, sure, let me see what I can do. I didn't think nothing of it. I was like, sure, yeah, let me,
Right.
And I called a couple of friends of mine that I knew, a couple of workers and stuff, and they're like, well, what's it for? What's it, who's it for? What are they going to pay us? What's it going to be like? What? And I'm like, I don't know, man. All I know is that, this is what they asked for, and I can tell you, because Bruce didn't tell me anything else, and then I can tell you that it may be worth your time. It may be worth it. And so the two guys that I called, they're both like, nah, man, we're not going to do it. That's messed up, And so I called Bruce up, and I told him I can't find anybody. So Bruce said, why don't you do it? And I was like, all right, sure, what I got to do? I said, I don't have, my kids, I had like 3 kids at the time. They're like 3 and 4 and 7, and I didn't think the mom would go for it. I was like, I don't think I can get the mom and the kids to go along with it, but, he goes, don't worry about it. He goes, we got somebody anyway. We got somebody. I said, all right. So I took Paul London up there with me, and so we did this deal, man. And when I got there, finally, Bruce finally explained to me. He said, "Okay, you guys are going to be illegal aliens, and you're going to get caught crossing the border, and Layfield's going to catch you guys, and we're going to do this, this, and this." And that's how it came about. We started like around 6 or 7 in the evening, and we didn't finish till like 1 in the morning. Wow. And we only took like 5 takes. And it's just the process of doing it, recording it and then looking at the video and then trying to reposition stuff or whatever. I didn't realize it would take so long, but at the end of the day, we got compensated. I got compensated very well. It was, we did it, I think it was JBL's ranch, it might have been his family's ranch or something, and we went to the kitchen afterwards, and Bruce opened up a briefcase with money, and I was like, holy shit.
Timing, man. Just agree to do it.
I didn't think I'd earned this much money, but then he goes, how much do I owe you? And I'm like, I don't know, Bruce. To me, it was nothing.
Right.
And he started counting off hundreds, and I was like, holy shit. So the cool thing was, we did that, and then like 2 weeks later, WWE was in San Antonio, like for SmackDown, and so whenever they came through, I take some guys to get like a little tryout or whatever, stuff like, or work as extras and stuff. And we were in the ring in the afternoon, and I was standing off to the side by the ramp, and in the corner of my eye, I see Vince McMahon walking down, and so I didn't think anything of it. But then I put my attention back on the ring, and I feel him grab my shoulder. He's like, "We just want to tell you thank you for what you did. It was greatly. It's going to help the storyline greatly. Really do appreciate it, man. It was very tremendous. I loved it." And it just really complimented the whole deal and stuff. And this is band telling me this. And so obviously I was like, "Well, yes, that type of stuff."
Right.
And then they showed it on the Jumbotron or the Titantron that night during SmackDown, and you could hear people in the audience. We're at the I guess the time was the Coliseum, this huge venue, and you can hear when I came out there, you could hear some people like, "Hey, that's Rudy Gonzalez," that type of stuff. Eddie was very, "Thank you, man. That was very cool of you to do that." And Layfield's, said thank you as well. I mean, it was I was just trying to help the company. I didn't. It was very cool to do also.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'll tell you what. Even though I didn't know you were doing that at the time, I remember that angle very well. Like when it first came out, and it was different. And I remember it got good heat on the angle. It made JBL a great heel. So I mean, hey, it worked.
And I think it was called like one of the greatest moments of SmackDown history.
Oh, yeah. That's so funny.
But yeah, you're right. They couldn't do that. I don't know. Maybe they could, but I don't think it would be better not to do something like that today.
I mean, we're definitely in a very more sensitive culture. I would say that.
Yeah.
But what are you up to right now?
Right now, I just got through washing my truck and vacuuming. I'm getting ready to make a trip to New Mexico for a couple of days, even in the social distancing era. Just trying to stay safe, man. Just trying to, hope this thing passes through. And I mean, I don't know what I would say getting back to normal, but who knows what normal is going to be in a few months or a few weeks, or I don't know,
Yeah, I do look forward to the day when we can have, and I know there's bigger things to worry about, but I do look forward to the day when we can have wrestling with fans in the arena again. That'd be nice to see.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, you're right. There are other things more important, but then again, when I was, and I brought this up to other people as well, was when I came in, one of the things I was told was pro wrestling fans come to see the wrestling shows to take their mind off of everything else in the world. You got the guys that are, construction workers, you have the doctors, lawyers, you have the professionals, you have the, blue collar guys sitting in the crowd, kick his ass, that type of stuff, cheering and booing, and you have poor people, you have, well off, you have all different people from every corner of the spectrum, and they're all sitting there just forgetting about, and if there was a way to do this stuff, and WWE is doing a very good job, I think, and Impact, I guess, are doing a good job of trying to keep the product out there, and people sitting back, and it's a little different now because the fans aren't boo, yay, that kind of stuff. The fans now are like, oh, they messed the spot up. Oh my God!
You're right.
Oh my God! It's just enjoy the matches, man. Enjoy, I'm sure, because I've been in that position, I'm sure they're not really, let me put it this way, I'm sure it's not that easy to sit there and go through all the motions you go to in a course of a wrestling match in front of nobody.
I'll say this, as a fan for many years, like, I never noticed it, but you look watching the match, and I can tell, like, when some people are instinctively playing to a crowd that's not there. But then I've noticed in some other matches where the people that are more vocal and maybe a little louder and can talk trash during a match, their matches seem to get a little more over with me. I get more invested in that. I'm like, okay, so they're verbally kind of pulling me in.
Right. It's a different deal, man. I mean, I admire those guys because, especially the younger guys that are working, because they've never, this is a new deal to them. They're used to being in front of, at the AT&T Center or whatever, the big arenas and stuff for Raw and SmackDown. And, a lot of the older guys, are probably like, just shut up and get out there. Because, that's just, back in the day, man, even though we talk about, old school wrestling stuff, there were some shitty crowds back in the day that, and the attitude was you'd do the same stuff you would do if there were 5 people or as if there were 500 people. If there's five people, you want to try and draw in and bring in more people and build up the audience. And guys, they don't understand that, So I get it,
And I will say this, guys like Bryan Danielson, I saw a match he had the other night with Cesaro. I can tell, they're probably used to having been in that position before. And you can tell, and it shows in a match where they go out there and just concentrate on telling the story of their match. And it's more engaging because of that.
So nowadays, okay, you're exactly right. Years ago when we were starting, when when these guys were breaking in at Sean's place, we would do a TV show, and we'd have 300-400 people, whatever, mainly because it was Sean, partly because it was Sean's promotion, that we drew so many, but it was also because the kids were out there working their butts off. But I really feel like if you just said, these wrestling students are going to put on a show, we wouldn't have had that many people. So I think part of that had to do with Sean being out there. But when we would go to the towns, there were some places that we did, that we did shows at where there were 20 or 30 or 10, and Brian, I remember those guys how are you supposed to wrestle in front of these people? And me and Sean were very adamant with go out there and just do your thing, just work your ass off. Just, we were very adamant about it. It didn't matter how few there were, just go out there and work. And so now, when the first match I saw was I think the first match was Brian with Gulak, Drew Gulak, and they beat each other up. That was one of the first matches and one of the first no audience matches they had. Yeah. They went out there and beat each other up, man. It was and I was like, holy shit. And my girlfriend Micah was like, they're really laying it in. And I was thinking, well, that's how we taught them. That's how, at least Brian anyway, I guess Rory caught on, or Drew caught on, but that's how we taught them, whether there's 5 people or 500, you got to go out there and perform,
Is there anything you want to promote before we let you go?
My wrestling school, Texas Wrestling Academy. If there's a lot of schools out there. There's very few that actually have trainers that with the experience, and I'm not really knocking anybody, but it has to be said. I mean, it's just based on what we talked about. We just talked about was just doing stuff the right way, and there's a lot of schools that a lot of trainers if you don't draw anybody, you suck, and that's not true. It's just if you don't draw anybody, you just got to work harder. And so if you want to learn how to do this stuff the right way and have a chance and be relevant and have come from a reputable school, Texas Wrestling Academy _SA is our email address. That's our Facebook page, Texas Wrestling Academy. And just say, hey, I want to be a wrestler, and I'll send you all the information you need. And even though we're in this coronavirus thing going on, I mean, we're doing some stuff to try and work around it, smaller groups. I'm starting a group June 1st, and it means dividing the groups into groups of 5, 6 or whatever. That's so be it. But yeah, I mean, Texas Wrestling Academy, that's the place where you want to go if you want to learn how to do the stuff correctly.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Thank you so much, man. This was great. I appreciate your time. You're a great storyteller. This was really good, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Not a problem. Anytime.
All right, so that wraps us up for this week. Thank you again for listening to the Working Fans Podcast. So as always, you can find us on Twitter at FansWorking. Our Facebook page is Working Fans Wrestling Pod. We have email where you can reach out to us and let us know what you think also. That's workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram, Working Fans Wrestling _pod. And then as always, please continue to listen to us on Anchor.fm, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, all your major platforms. If you're following us on Apple Podcasts, which we are also on now, and YouTube, please make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. It helps us bring you these podcasts where we get to talk to you and talk with you every week.